the motors of our economy, the principal employers across the country, get through this difficult time and come back strong afterwards.
Merci. Opérateur, dernière question.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Adam Uris, New Brunswick Telegraph. Line open.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for taking my question. New Brunswick Premier Blaine Higgs says several of the province's employers are struggling to get employees to agree to return to work, suggesting it's a repercussion of the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. Are there concerns that Canadians may instead want to stay home and collect benefits and not return to work? And was this thought of when the plan rolled out?
We are facing one of the largest health crises, the largest economic crisis of our lifetime, and Canadians need help. They need help paying their rent, they need help buying groceries, they need help caring for their loved ones. They've lost their paychecks, they've seen themselves very, very anxious about their own health, about their parents' health, about their future. We needed to help Canadians, and we did exactly that. Helping Canadians right across the country get through this pandemic is not just about generosity, it's about making sure that we are able to do the things necessary in every home across the country to be able to keep this country safe and to make sure we have an economy that can rebuild quickly afterwards. This government will help Canadians who need help, period. Okay. On est en train de vivre une situation sans précédent, une situation extrêmement grave en termes de crise de santé publique, en termes de crise économique. Et les Canadiens, d'un bout à l'autre de ce pays, ont besoin d'aide. Ont besoin d'aide pour payer leur loyer, ont besoin d'aide pour faire leur épicerie, pour s'occuper de leurs enfants ou de leurs parents. On est dans une situation où on doit aider les gens pour pouvoir les permettre de prendre les bonnes décisions et de rester chez eux et d'attendre que cette crise passe. C'est la priorité. C'est qui on est au Canada. On s'entraide. On est là les uns pour les autres. C'est la seule façon qu'on va passer à travers cette crise et avoir une économie qui va revenir après. C'est qui nous sommes d'être là les uns pour les autres.
On follow-up?
Yes, please. Premier Higgs also says he fears that equalization payments that some provinces have come to rely on will be less lucrative in the near future as so-called have provinces struggle more than ever. Can you assure the provinces that they will not see a decline in equalization in the coming years?
Yeah. Equalization has a formula that has long been set, and we will continue to look at ways to ensure that it's working for provinces right across the country. It's important that Canadians in every province receive the services to which they are entitled right across the country. That's what equalization is about, and we support that principle very strongly.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau, Louis Blouin de Radio-Canada. Quand vous regardez ce qui se passe dans les CHSLD en ce moment, est-ce que vous regrettez de ne pas avoir été plus généreux dans les transferts en santé, donnés par exemple aux provinces qu'elles demandaient ce 5 % d'augmentation? Est-ce que vous regrettez de ne pas avoir été plus généreux?
Je pense qu'il faut toujours prendre des réflexions sur les résidences d'aînés qui ne sont pas toujours nécessaires à l'intérieur du système de santé. Peut-être qu'effectivement, on pourrait avoir une discussion sur si nos résidences d'aînés devraient faire partie du système de santé et soit régies sous la loi canadienne sur la santé. Il y a plusieurs suggestions, plusieurs discussions qu'on pourrait avoir dans les mois à venir. Pour l'instant, ma priorité, c'est de m'assurer qu'on est en train d'aider les gens qui souffrent aujourd'hui et demain, et c'est ce qu'on va faire.
Cette approche-là que vous suggérez, pensez-vous que ça pourrait créer de la résistance de la part des provinces, à savoir un empiètement dans leur champ de compétences? Et par ailleurs, si vous êtes pour donner plus d'argent, est-ce que ce serait attaché à des conditions pour vous assurer que l'argent va aux endroits souhaités?
C'est de très bonnes questions et c'est des questions qu'on va se poser en discussion entre province et gouvernement fédéral. On est une fédération qui est là pour s'adapter aux réalités de la situation et du monde dans lequel on vit. Et je sais que nous sommes unis dans notre désir de voir nos citoyens bien servis, de prendre bien soin de nos citoyens. Et c'est exactement ce qu'on va travailler ensemble. Il va y avoir énormément de réflexion et de discussions à avoir par la suite de cette pandémie. Pour l'instant, on est en train de travailler ensemble pour s'assurer qu'on prend soin de tous les Canadiens.
Good morning, Prime Minister Salima Shivji, CBC. I want to go back to what you said about the federal government coordinating the reopening of provinces. You talked about guidelines. What sort of guidelines is your government giving the provinces, and would you ever go so far as to tell a province not to reopen something?
I think we all understand that the gains that we have made in controlling the spread of COVID-19 to this point have come because people have been very, very diligent across the country about staying home, about not working unless it's essential, about not going out unless it's essential, to both protect essential workers and specifically to prevent our health system from getting overloaded. That has been successful. We also have seen that because of that success, we can now talk about gradually or carefully reopening economic activity in certain sectors. But we have to be very, very careful. That's why what we're working on in collaboration with the provinces is a set of principles and elements that should be in place and should be followed as provinces make the decisions on how and what they will reopen, when, and if even. Things like ensuring proper levels of testing across the province and contact tracing, but other things like ensuring workplace safety. If people work in cubicles, if they work in a startup with beanbags, if they work on a shop floor, if they work in a food production facility, what are the measures that need to be put in place to keep them safe? These are principles saying you need to make sure that workplaces that reopen are safe in health norms, but what those actually are, what that will look like, will be up to the provinces and the local jurisdictions to determine. But we need to make sure that as we look at economic reopening, we are grounding ourselves in the principles that'll ensure that we don't allow for further spread or a new spike of COVID-19. And if there are cases that start to resurge, as likely will happen here and there, that we are able to manage, control, and reduce them rapidly.
We got a lot more details on the Nova Scotia shooting this morning and the timeline with the gunman. We do now know that there was a call made to 911 and the RCMP were informed that the gunman was wearing a uniform, RCMP uniform, as well as driving a car that looked like an RCMP car. And yet there was still no emergency alert. Do you see that as a failure on the part of the RCMP?
I think right now we need to be there for the people of Nova Scotia, for the families and communities that are grieving, and give them all the support we can. Part of that support needs to be answering their many, many questions. Questions about what happened during the incident, what happened to their loved ones, but also questions about the police response and what exactly happened and what could have happened differently or better. Those questions are things that we are going to need to answer, and we're going to work very hard to ensure that those questions are answered.
Ian Wood, CTV News. Prime Minister, the Nova Scotia emergency response teams in Halifax and the shootings took place in rural communities across the province. It took over 12 hours to apprehend the shooter, and the RCMP have highlighted that this was a very difficult situation to be in. Are you confident that the RCMP is adequately resourced in rural communities?
I think these are questions that people are going to be asking right now in Nova Scotia, but indeed all across the country. And they are questions that we don't have the answers to yet. We need to understand exactly what happened, understand how the response was, understand where the response could have been better with different resources or different protocols in place, and ensure that, as from any tragedy of this scale, we learn and we improve to make sure that it never happens again.
Many of the financial aid measures that have been announced so far, whether they be personal or for business, have only been committed at this point through June, but with no end of the restrictions being loosened. You yourself just said earlier that we're not out of the woods yet. Should people and businesses expect those aid measures to be extended, or will they be on their own come the summer?
As we've seen from countries around the world, there is a lot of reflection on how we reopen the economy, how it happens gradually, whether there is a scaling down of certain measures, whether certain measures need to be continued fully for many more months. These are reflections that we will, of course, engage in with businesses, with Canadians over the coming months as we look at careful reopening, as we continue to remain closed and vigilant in other areas. The situation is ongoing, and as we have been from the very beginning, we will adjust and adapt to what we see actually happening. We will be there to support Canadians in the right way, in both ensuring that we get through this health crisis and ensuring that we come back as strongly in terms of the economy as we possibly can. But the only way to be able to do that is to make sure that for now and for the coming weeks, we remain extremely vigilant and we keep up with the social distancing rules.
Brian Mullen, Global News. Prime Minister, following up on some of the previous questions, some businesses say the rent relief announcement is too little too late and they've already had to close. How concerned are you that the long-term impact of this shutdown could be permanent for some sectors of the economy?
We moved forward on access to credit for small businesses quite quickly. We tried to ensure that through the Canada Emergency Response Benefit and the wage subsidy, that there be responses to businesses and to workers as quickly as possible to allow them to continue to pay for their groceries and their rent at home and support their families. We know certain businesses are extremely hard hit, and that's why the access to credit and the support for the rent is going to be important. But we also see that this is the greatest economic impact and event of our lifetimes, and it is going to be extremely difficult. Our focus is on recognizing that, first of all, our economy and our businesses were in excellent shape before. The services that were needed, the activities we had as a country were going very, very well. This is an event that put us into deep freeze, put us into hibernation, as it were, and everyone had to stop and hold while we let this wave of COVID pass through. And our ability to hold well depends on many things, but including government's ability to support people, to demonstrate that we will be there to make sure that as many as possible of our businesses will be able to bounce back afterwards. We are working to try and get help out to as many people as possible. Some sectors are more hard hit than others, but we know at the end of this, people will need to travel for work, for pleasure. People will need to go to restaurants. People will need to become tourists again in different places across the country and around the world. There are businesses that are hardest hit now who will be able to restart